It's a topic not easy to talk about, but the numbers are alarming. There's a 20% chance, if you're a woman, that you will be sexually assaulted in your lifetime.
Think about that. That's 1 in every 5 women. So who are these attackers? What's going through their mind, and why do they rape?
WFMY News 2's Kevin Kennedy takes us inside the mind of a rapist.
It happens every 98 seconds. A person is sexually assaulted in the U.S.
It's a devastating experience.
The victims usually women, the perpetrator often someone they know.
Some people never work through it. Their whole life is changed.
The attack can be crippling in the moment and in the days, months, and years that follow.
Rape is murder of the soul.
In 2017, more than 2,000 women in North Carolina were sexually assaulted. And yet, on average, 97% of all rapists never go to jail.
They hone their craft. Each time they rape, they hone their craft.
The women they attack usually chosen out of convenience, opportunity playing a huge role. Most predator rapes are random. Debbie Longo, a survivor.
I was walking from a class.
A college sophomore, the attack just off campus.
Before I could do anything, he was upon me.
In just seconds, Debbie's life would change forever.
He grabbed a hold of my leg and threw me down on a railroad track.
Her attacker just 16 years old. Debbie was raped and beaten.
He planned this. He was there waiting for someone to come across that area.
More than 40 years later, the images of that violent moment still seared in her mind.
There's so many things that haunt me about it.
Why me is a question victims often ask. What did I do wrong? The answer is nothing.
Every woman has a right to go out and have a few drinks with their friend. Every woman has a right to wear what they want to wear. They're not asking to be raped.
There are more than 18,000 sexual offenders listed on the North Carolina State Database. Not all are rapists, but most are men. They come in all shapes and sizes, young and old, different in appearance, and yet they all share distorted DNA.
I think predator is an accurate term. Predator is an accurate term. They're looking for women.
So who are they? Who are these madmen that prey on the innocent?
Who they are generally as people are very similar to any other average person.
The Harnett Correctional Institute in Lillington is home to dozens of sexual offenders. Robert Carbo is the prison psychologist. If anyone knows what's inside the mind of a rapist, it's him.
They have some what we call distorted kind of thinking.
Christy Cornwell has been working with sex offenders more than 20 years, trying to uncover why they attack.
That's the million-dollar question.
What she has discovered is something most will find hard to fathom, especially if you read the details of their attacks.
They're stimulating people, they're nice people, they're kind people.
How is that possible? How does so much violence lurk inside what we are to believe is a kind person? And why does evil often win out?
In their mind in the moment, they have had some way of convincing themselves that it's okay for them to do it.
That distorted thinking, turning a normal person into what some say is a monster.
The way I would put it is the behavior is monstrous. The behavior is violent. The behavior is hurtful and terrible. It doesn't make the person himself a monster.
Lieutenant John Summerendike would disagree. He's on the other side of the prison walls, spending the better part of his career tracking and arresting sexual offenders.
They're bad people. They're raping people. They're bad people.
Statistics may back that up. More than half of all alleged rapists have been arrested before.
We can't get caught up in typecasting rapists and thinking that they only do one type of rape, because a rapist is a rapist.
Here's what we also know. Rape is grossly underreported, only about 25%. Yet 1 in 5 women will be the victim of rape. More than 40 years later, Debbie is still not over it, but she has forgiven and understands the more we help these men and learn what makes them tick, the safer we'll all be. Kevin Kennedy, News 2.
Now, think about these numbers. 94% of sexually assaulted women will deal with PTSD, and 33% will consider suicide. If you or someone you know has been impacted by sexual assault, there is help. Go to our website. There you'll find links to organizations that work with victims.